Great. All right. Well, thanks everyone for hanging out with me right now and learning about storytelling and how to tell your fundraising story. As Natalie said, it's funny when people say, we all know that, content creation is all about storytelling, or we all know the importance of storytelling. But even knowing that, I think people have a really hard time in how to articulate that story and how to bring in different stories and know the structure of story and like what actually makes a story and what makes a good story and what makes, most importantly, for you and what you're trying to do, what makes a story that people really get to buy into what you're selling, right? What you're selling, or the idea that you want to put forth into the world. So that's kind of what I'm going to get into today. And in order to show, don't tell, I'm going to tell you a story to kick us off and kind of break it down so that you have an example to work off of before we get into like really how to structure it for your fundraising pitch. So I was on the phone in the car with my mom the other day because I have two kids and I'm a busy single parent. And so, the chance I get to catch up with my mom is really in the car ride in between pickup and drop off. And I was telling her, I was like, Mom, I think I have a future as a professional personal organizer. And she was like, honey, I love you, in that like boomer mom kind of way. She's like, but I that would not be my first choice for you. Yeah. And I was like, I get it. I wasn't the most organized kid. And like, as a single mom for the past 6 years, and you're running my own business and a mom for 10, a working mom for 10, like it's hard to keep stuff perfectly in place and you have really high standards. But I've changed, I'm a grown ass person. I'm a different person. And I recently had to move my boyfriend, who is also divorced, from his bachelor pad in the city into a little house in Marin. And I took the opportunity to really help him organize his entire space because his other space was chaotic. And I got like a panic attack every single time I went into his house. He just had stuff everywhere and was completely disorganized, and it was a small space. And then he couldn't find stuff. So then he'd buy new stuff and it'd add to the chaos. And I went in there and I had a perfect system for using the space, maximizing the space, making it as efficient as possible so you could find everything, and everything made logical sense. And I was like, I think this is really my path here. If like content marketing, brand marketing don't work out, or like AI automates like everything that I do, I have a future as a personal organizer. My mom's like, I'm still not buying it. I still don't see it. I don't see why people would pay for that. So I was like, actually, this is currently an $11 billion industry, and it's on track to be a $20 billion industry because everybody's busy and life has changed and everybody's life is so chaotic, and it's hard to have an organized space because you're too busy to organize it. So it's like one of the first things that people outsource. Finally, she was like, okay, well, what do you need from me? I was like, I just need you to believe in this vision of the future that I have, that maybe one day when AI takes my job and everybody's jobs, that I'm going to be able to do. She's like, okay, I put you in. Okay, that's my mom. She's real cute. So to get into the story, I want to just break down the story that I actually told you, to ride you through the elements of like what makes an effective story. That one was literally just like off the cuff. But I set the scene. I brought you into a place and I painted a scene in your mind of where I am in the car talking to my mom, which is probably something that most of you, I'd say, could probably connect with, right? I created stakes. My mom doesn't believe in me. I needed my new guy's place to be like really nice, or I'd have a panic attack. I told the story of transformation. I brought in the industry. This is how the industry has changed. This is the opportunity I see. It's a big opportunity. I backed it up with my facts. I brought in my customer success story. My boyfriend is real stoked. His place is organized. He can live his life to his fullest. And then I brought in my call to action to support and believe in this mission that I am putting forward. So take it for what it is, example. But ultimately, I was painting a picture in your mind that ultimately is trying to get my mom, who is the decision maker in this situation, to believe that this was the path forward and there's opportunity in this path forward. And whether or not I managed to convince her or not, maybe is still up for debate, but chipping away. Okay, so ultimately, the big idea here is that storytelling is really about getting buy-in for your big idea. It's getting someone to believe in something, a vision of a future that they want to be part of. It's getting them to believe in you, especially more than anything. I hear this all the time. Investors invest in the people, not just the opportunity or the good idea. And if you're really effective with this, it's a way to believe in a better version of themselves that they want to be part of. And I leave you with this quote by Steve Jobs. I'll get into why this is true in so many other ways. So the reason that storytelling matters in fundraising so much, and really in anything that you do, and in anything that you're trying to communicate, and anything that you're trying to sell, is that stories are more memorable than facts. They just putting something in the version of a story just makes it easier to retain. It makes it easier to recall. It makes it easier for people to retell. Like, you might not remember anything from this presentation, but you might remember the fact that I am divorced and just helped my boyfriend move into his new apartment. Or, you might resonate with the fact that like your boomer mom is a really challenging one to convince of the thing you're trying to convince, because they have this version of you or this vision of you from your past that is no longer true. Stories create a natural structure for information. The way that we process information is like a beginning, a middle, and an end, and they help create meaning throughout that structure. And like I said earlier, investors really invest in founders, and not just the products. And your personal story, your purpose story, which is this vision of the future that you're creating, and your customer story, your industry change story, are really the things that help inspire confidence to make sure that you are the right person at the right time with the right opportunity to see this thing through. But don't take it from me. You can take it from Reid Hoffman at LinkedIn, who said great startups are based on great stories that can rally customers, employees, and investors behind their mission. So when we do brand storytelling, it's the first step before we create any sort of outward messaging or content or positioning, because it's really this like narrative that you're trying to get people to buy into and want to be part of. So just to name a few successful stories that have landed actual investment dollars, I wanted to ground you in some really, really well-known examples. But Airbnb really, really raised their first round of funding with their what I call the founder character story. And I'll get into all the different types of stories you can tell and the ones that you can really ground your pitch in, because you'll have all of a version of all of these stories throughout, but the one that you really want to start with and end with and amplify is like your strongest one, and that depends on you. But the founder character story, Airbnb raised 20,000 from Y Combinator after multiple failed attempts at fundraising. Finally, they were about to get evicted from their apartment, and they were like, we have to make like one last ditch effort to make this work. And they spun up this campaign during the 2008 presidential election, where they created cereal boxes with Obama's face on them and McCain's face on them, and they called it Obama O's and McCain C's, and they sold them for $40 a pop, and they managed to get people to buy them and bootstrap the idea for Airbnb a little bit longer until an investor took notice and really was like, all right, if you guys can sell people on a $40 box of cereal, I think you can sell them anything. So that was the story that got them that first round. Tesla really had raised most of its money and brought people along this journey with their vision of the future. by how they're building, the future of sustainable transportation. So this is really a story about the world that they are contributing to, that you as a potential customer or investor want to be part of. You want to be part of this solution, this like greater cultural cause, or this greater global cause. Bumble really sold on a personal problem that tapped into a cultural issue. She raised her first $10 million round by talking about her personal experience with sexism that led her to create this platform where women make the first move. Slack had really like a personal customer success story. They were building a completely different product. It was like a gaming app, and they had built Slack as an internal communication system to manage the project. And then they realized that that was actually the product, and such a good product, in the way that it helped them successfully build this thing and ultimately make this pivot. And then Peloton really sold the story of how the industry is shifting, how culture is shifting, how trends are shifting. And ultimately, like, people wanted to work out in their home, but were lonely and wanted to do it with community. Like, you still wanted the benefits of going to the gym, but from the convenience of your home. And how this could lead to the transformation of the person you want to become, this fit savvy person who's also like really efficient and is pelotoning while they're working. So they sold sort of that story of the industry shift and trends. So before we get into it, like what is a story? I think it's important to get grounded in what actually is a story. And a story is something that it's change over time. So it's like, in its very basic form, stripped down, is this was the way things were, or this is the way I was. This is some stuff that happened that led to a change, and this is the way things are now. So it's transformation, it's change over time. That gets people to see what you're seeing in your way. So fundraising, it's where you were and where you're ending up, and you and your customers and your results, where they were, where they are now. So that is, in essence, a story. And ultimately, you're wanting to answer this question: what's the mission here? Like, what is the purpose of any of this? What's the big opportunity? Who's the target market? And am I, or are we, the right team to tackle it? As Jack Dorsey said, storytelling is about distilling everything into the one thing that matters. So to that end, this is an exercise that I always do with teams and brands to really get into what is that thing that really matters. And one of the best exercises we do to get there is to answer this question: the world would be a better place if our vision of the future was realized. So to give you some really good, iconic brand startup examples, Tesla answered this question by saying the world would better be a better place if we transition to a sustainable energy and reduce our dependence on fossil fuels. Uber, the world would be a better place if transportation were as accessible and seamless as tapping a button. Airbnb, if people could belong anywhere and experience the world through community and connection. And Patagonia, if businesses prioritize saving the planet over profit. So this is the very clear distillation of, like, why does any of this matter? Why is what I'm doing matter? Why should you care? Why should anyone care? So investors ultimately want to know why this problem and why it matters right now, why this solution and why it's better than other solutions, and why this founder. And the good news here for you is that it gives you so many stories to tell. But don't take it from me, take it from Sarah Blakely. People have to feel connected to your story to buy into your brand. This could not be more true. All right, so here are the types of stories that you could tell throughout your pitch, throughout your content, as you're building your personal profile, as you're networking. In the end, you should be telling one of all of these stories. And I can give you an example of how I recently worked with the founder to do that. And we can dig into it in the next session. But you can tell your founder's origin story. Again, this is like the Airbnb example of why you started this company and why you're uniquely qualified to solve this problem, or your journey to insights like Slack, or they're like, we were building this other thing, but then we realized we actually had this amazing system, and like all these businesses are wasting so much time on email and communications. And what if there were a better way to communicate that could save everyone all this time and money? Your vision story, like Tesla, how are you contributing to a revolution, a shift, a new way of things being done? And your customer story. So, whose lives is better, whose lives are going to be improved, whose lives are better, whose problems are solved because of the solution you're providing. Even data. Even data can and should be a story. And I will give you a couple of examples to exemplify this. But ultimately, what's key to remember, whether you're in B2B or B2C or B2B to B2C, is that people make decisions based on emotion, and then they justify with logic later. You're always selling to a person, no matter what, at the end of the day. And if you're getting funding, you're trying to sell yourself, your idea, your vision of the future to a human, to a person. So you need to know that audience and understand that they are human. So what do you think is more compelling? And I will leave that up to you. But we've saved 500 small businesses from bankruptcy. And let us tell you why and how in this. Over 500 businesses have used our platform to increase their revenue by 30%. It's like, those are good numbers. That number should be included, but it's not giving you the same emotional connection or resonance or impact as like 500 businesses would have gone bankrupt had we not, had they not used our solution. Or we helped a single mother of two, so this is like a very specific example, turn her side hustle into a thriving business, allowing her to quit her second job and spend more time with her kids. She's not the only one. We have, and then you can go into your data and facts, but versus over 1,000 entrepreneurs have used our platform to increase their revenue by 25%, right? Good numbers, but spent in a way that actually creates that emotional resonance and connection. This one's from me. Storytelling transforms data into human impact, making the stakes real. I said that once and I was like, that's going. All right. So what are the core elements of a good story? Like a story that you're using. You need a character, right? So it could be you, the founders, it could be your team, it could be your customers, it could be the main character of your story. Point of view, the perspective that it's coming from. It needs a theme, in this case, your overall mission, your vision. It needs some sort of conflict. So this isn't just the problem that you're solving, but like every beat of your story should then have a problem and a solution. So like, I was once struggling with this, and then, this is what happened. The industry was going this way, and now this has happened. My customer was facing this challenge, and now this is what happened. It should also have, to make it an interesting story, and maybe my example at the beginning wasn't as good as the one that I told the other day, but it's got to have some sort of stakes. It's got to make you care. Like, what are the stakes? What's going to happen if this other thing doesn't happen, or if the solution isn't presented? Again, they make you care. They get you invested. For me, it's like my boyfriend would have another like chaotic space to run into. Like my mom wasn't believing me. Whatever it is, stakes. An element of surprise and specifics. The more specific you can get, the more you can, again, like create that image in your audience, your investors' mind. So like for the story I told, I was trying to ground you in a location and place, right? I was on the phone in the car with my mom driving to pick up my kids from school. So I painted a very clear image so you could put yourself in those shoes. You're like in the car with me. The great example from iconic startups is the Uber example. I'm blanking on the founder's name right now, but he's like, the way he starts that story is, I was standing in the rain in Paris and I could not get a cab. Right. And this is when this idea came to me. So it's like location, details, place. You can imagine yourself, when's the last time you were like in New York City, standing in the freezing cold or in the rain, unable to wave down a cab pre-Uber days. Like you can put yourself in that situation. And it creates a vivid picture. For a founder, to make it a little bit more relevant and recent, for a founder I was talking about who is starting a personal, an agentic AI personal shopping solution for the internet. I was like, well, like, how did this happen? She's like, well, I was sitting on my computer trying to shop online because I was about to start this MBA program. And in India, like MBA programs are full of people you want to impress, and everyone dresses up. And I've been a mother for 2 years now. I have nothing in my closet. And so, of course, I go online to find the thing I want, and I'm wasting hours. Like, I cannot find what I'm looking for. I have like this particular shape, I'm petite, I hate colors. And this isn't as like, there needs to be a better, faster, easier way to do this, something that's tailored to me. She came up with a solution. So that's where we kind of started grounding her story. All right. The ways that you can use a story start with even just like a single narrative distillation of what you're doing. So if we were to do that, say for like a bio or like a really quick networking pitch where you're trying to sell the story, this is a template of what it could look like. So our customer was struggling with this conflict. So we, the all-knowing guide, created this wonderful solution to help them achieve this resolution, and now their lives are different and everything's better. And aren't you interested to know more about how this is working and who it could help? Core elements of a great fundraising story include this hook, like really grabbing. This is the core elements of any story. This is a template you could use for your LinkedIn stories. But a hook that really grabs attention immediately with some sort of captivating or winning scene, some captivating problem, grounding you in place and time and space in the problem, the conflict, the resolution, the proof points, your data, who it's helped, why, what the opportunity is, the size of the industry, competing solutions, and emotional resonance, more than anything. So for this agentic AI personal shopper, I was like, how can we, most of your investors are going to be men, the most of the rooms you're going to be talking to are probably going to be men. So I think women can probably understand, ground themselves, see themselves in this problem that you've presented for yourself. But like, what about the dudes in the room, right? What when it comes to this personal shopping issue, like what can we pull, what details can we get at that like pokes at their problem with this, right? And it's going to come down to time and efficiency and not knowing and not wanting to spend the time doing this. It comes down to like identity and how you present yourself. Like, what's the deeper emotionally resonant thing there that we can bring in as an example? So here's another template to kind of see what this looks like a little bit in longer format as you're weaving your story throughout your deck, throughout your pitch. Again, starting with the origin story and the specific experience that took you to this insight. To solve this problem, after I had this insight, this is the solution. These are the key benefits of it along the way. Now, this is like really showing you a little bit of my character and like things that I've learned, how I've had to pivot, how it's like really clever and coming up with this like $40 cereal box campaign, which allowed me to get to the next place, showing my grit and resilience. And then my customer, this is like really, this isn't just like an idealistic thing. This is something that is really, helping solving problems, and then bringing them into the bigger vision. We're building a future where attraction, and then a specific ask, right? Or a call to action or a specific goal, a really strong vision of the future that like you don't want to be left behind. And I put this into an example for like how it could have gone for like that conversation, maybe that investor meeting with the team at Slack. I was like, I couldn't believe it when I learned that most small businesses waste over 100 hours per employee managing email. Like, this is absurd, right? When I was building my first startup in gaming, I found a way to get around that problem. Our initial idea failed. More detail, but our internal tool became so essential, we realized that was the real opportunity. So our mission is to make the work more simple and collaborative for every team in the whole world, right? Sarah, this is an example, beyond ours, saved all this time. A data story, we've grown to 1 1 million daily users, and the call to action, will you join us in building the future of work? So whatever you do, however you do that middle, just remember that there is this thing called the primacy and recency effect, where people mostly remember the first thing you said and the last thing you said, which is why it's critically important to make sure you start strong and you end strong, no matter what you do in the middle there, right? So again, some examples from the startups I mentioned. I was standing in the rain in Paris waiting for a cab for 20 minutes, and I thought, like, there has to be a better way, right? Or Glossier. We asked thousands of women what they wanted in beauty products, and they all said the same thing: simplicity. So she's starting with the statement, with the problem. Airbnb, starting with like a vision of the future. What if you could belong anywhere just by staying in someone's home instead of a hotel? Okay, like a more idealistic vision of the future. And then for the finish, like close the loop, create a call to action, like where you started, like how is it completely opposite from where you're ending now? So that is a great way to close that loop. It's like we're starting all the way over here and we're ending all the way over there. And this is how we're bringing you through that journey. Or really strong by like painting this vision of the future. If you have a really powerful vision of the future, just kind of use your strongest assets when it comes to this stuff. So it could be your customer story, it could be your vision story, it could be, for you, your journey to discovery story. And only bounce it off of people to see if you're not clear on what that strong story is. To put it in John Foley's words, we didn't just sell a bike, we sold the idea of transformation. And storytelling help people see our brain. That's critical. You want your investors to see themselves in the solution. Okay, so where do you start finding these stories if you don't have a clear grasp of what they could potentially be or what your strong stories are? I won't go through all of these. You can screenshot it if you find it helpful. But it's a series of questions you can ask for all of these. So your origin story, what unique skills or background do you have to solve this problem, your journey to insight, has the industry or environment shifted to create this opportunity now? Like, why is the opportunity now? What's changed? Your vision story, what's a problem that you want to eliminate completely? What's the deeper mission here behind what you're doing? Or your customer story, why did they choose you over something else, or a different solution? How would life look without their solution? Like, these are all questions you can start asking yourself to start digging for those more resonant stories. As for how you deliver your stories, it's an important, element to touch on, because you could have a great story, but if your delivery sucks, you're going to have a hard time keeping that attention. It's really important to come, with energy and excitement around what you're talking about. Really important to speak slowly and take pauses. Wait, what you're going to say. It also helps build intrigue in the story if you kind of pause before you reveal the next thing or introduce the next stakes. And signposting is also really helpful when telling stories, because it gives your audience like a roadmap of what to expect. So how signposting is essentially like, how are we solving this problem? Well, 3 ways: 1, 2, and 3. And we're going to walk you through those. Like, that's signposting. It's also a really good way to answer questions in the Q&A, and give you a little bit more time to like think through your answer. Like, what's your go-to-market strategy? Right. All right. Well, we have, 3 core elements of our go-to-market strategy again. So that's signposting. All right, if you take anything away from this, I hope you take away this. The most important thing to remember when building your fundraising story, telling your story online, building a brand, is to show the why behind the what you're doing. Like, keep digging into why. Keep asking why you're doing this, why your customer would choose this, why it matters, why anyone should care, why now. Don't skip your founder's journey. They make your pitch more relatable. They make your pitch more compelling. They make you more memorable. Tie your story to your customer. Muy importante. build a connection for better data, bring your audience along for the ride, like really, really, you gotta sell them on this mission, on this vision, and taking them on this journey of how you came to it and why it matters now and where it's going, is the best way to do that. And I highly recommend doing that when you're marketing yourself, and any other way you're marketing yourself. Like, just build in public, bring us along for the ride, let us see the setbacks, let us see the failures. It just gets people so much more invested in what you're doing. And then highlight the cultural impact or the industry, and shifting. Again, to ground it in like, why this, why now. And if you get lost, just come back to the problem you're solving, your unique insight or approach, the market opportunity, your business model, the significance of this right now, traction and proof points, and most importantly, you and your team and why you're the right people for this. And tell your story everywhere is my last little reminder. Tell it at networking events, tell it anytime you get on a call with a partner, or an opportunity, or an informational interview, tell it online.